This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psych Legal Pop podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. My name is Brooke Brigham, and I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
And today we are here to talk about the documentary A Body in the Snow, the Karen Read case, which is streaming on... It's on Max. It's also Investigation ID.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a channel? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a channel, but I think it's part of the TLC package. So if you have that, just go to Max.
Go to Max. It's just easier.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this case is the timing of this is a 5-part docuseries, and it is very interesting timing wise. So we had an episode last year on, it was June 26th of 2024, when the first trial was going on. We did a whole episode, kind of covered all the basics of what the case was about, because it had gotten really, became this national news story, because it was just so intriguing and everyone was talking about it, and everyone was kind of obsessed with it. So then a few days later, actually, a verdict came in on July 1st, and we had another quick episode talking about the verdict. So basically it was a mistrial was declared because the jurors said they could not come to a unanimous decision on the 3 charges, but actually they didn't really say that. That was the implication. But after the trial, it came out that they actually had reached a decision on 2 of the 3 charges, but they were confused about how they could render a partial verdict, and the judge did not poll the jurors, and the attorneys did not request that the jurors be polled before they were excused. So they just left, and then afterwards started contacting Karen Read's attorneys and saying, hey, we actually did vote unanimously to acquit her on the second-degree murder, and also on the it was leaving the scene
of an accident.
Yeah, leaving the scene of the accident. So I guess they were really just hung on the involuntary manslaughter. So that, she basically saying she didn't know what she was doing, and accidentally hit him or whatever, didn't know, and then so there's no specific intent there. So they are now retrying the case, and in the year or so, less than a year since the old case, there's been a lot of activity in this case. There's been a lot of motions by the defense trying to get these charges dismissed because of the jury, what the jury has said, trying to get the case dismissed because the prosecution suppressed exculpatory evidence, and also in the meantime, this Sergeant Proctor, who was in charge of the whole thing, has been fired from the Boston police.
I was yesterday, sorry. Steve and I were driving yesterday, and Steve's like, well, what's this Karen Read case about? And I was, and who's this Proctor? I was just telling him about these messages, and Steve could not believe it. He was just like, because I wanted to ask Steve about growing up in Massachusetts, and because he's from Framingham, Mass, which is a different part of Massachusetts than where Canton is. But I was just trying to get his sense of, because New Englanders are different than Californians. They are, and my own impressions of them, and I think that it was watching this documentary. That's what it kept reminding me of just like, oh wow, very direct, very in your face, there's a difference of how people communicate and all of that. So I was just asking him questions, but he was shocked by the Proctor stuff. I mean, because it is very shocking.
Yeah, to remind people, Proctor's the one who, like, within hours of being assigned to this case, started a group chat, a text.
I don't think he started the group chat. He was just responding to the group chat.
Well, he was texting his high school buddies about the case and calling Karen Reed a whack job cunt, and then they're asking, but is she hot? And he's like, yeah, she's hot, but
she's got a weird Fall River accent. And I was asking Steve about that. I'm like, and Steve was saying Fall River has a very, he said there's a lot of Portuguese families there in Fall River. And he was like, well, I don't know why someone would think that's a weird accent, but anyway, just some Massachusetts information.
I guess there's a hierarchy of accents in Massachusetts, but and it is very, because Karen Reed is a professional. All these law enforcement people, although they don't always act professional, these are people with important jobs, and the way that they speak and the way they talk to each other. And even when they were showing these texts of Karen Reed kind of flirting with Higgins, is it?
Yeah, Brian Higgins.
It's like, hey, I think you're hot. You think I'm hot? You like me? What do you like about me? And it's like, oh my God. Like, anyway.
Yeah.
So the question, so this documentary is very interesting because they started so Karen and her defense team, we have Alan Jackson,
David Yannetti.
David Yannetti's the local Boston guy, and then Elizabeth Little, who works with Alan Jackson, and they came from California. And Alan Jackson, he successfully defended Kevin Spacey. He's a former prosecutor who prosecuted the guy, Phil Spector.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah. So, so she has her legal team, and they clearly decided to make this documentary from the beginning. It starts like when it's the eve of trial. This is the first trial last year, and it starts with Jackson and Little coming into town. They're all set up at this hotel. They have a war room where they've got all their stuff, and they're preparing for trial. And so this is the first time that Karen, she says, this is my testimony, because she did not testify in the first case. And there's a reason. She doesn't come off well.
Oh, okay. So we didn't talk about this. So let's talk about this.
Okay.
Because that wasn't my impression of her, but high level. Because I think this is what is very, if you know a lot about this case, you might think like, oh, what's the point of this documentary? Because how much new information was really revealed. But I think what is very unique about this is we get to know Karen Reed.
Yeah, she basically narrates the documentary. So it's her chance to speak out. We have never heard her talk about the case. We've just heard like snippets. She did that one interview, I think it was on 2020, like very early on. And I think it was, and again, she comes off as very abrasive, aggressive. She's not trying to be. It's just like you said, it's that kind of Bostonian attitude. It's a real attitude. And so she did not testify in the first trial. And so now she's getting to tell her story. And I wonder what the thought process what was their thought process of making this? Because if she I don't know, because they did. If she would have been totally acquitted, it would have been this great victory. But she wasn't. But she wasn't convicted. I don't know. It's just I don't know how to explain it. But it's like, why would you do this? Why would you choose to do this?
I understand it. Listen. I think that most likely, right, there was going to be something about it. There already has been other little stories here and there. People are going to cover it. So if I was Alan Jackson or someone else and I was telling her about this, I would say, listen, everybody's going to tell your story regardless. They already are. So this is your opportunity to tell your story and say what you want to say. And yeah, this is her opportunity to testify and tell people, like, this is my truth. This is what happened. This is what's going on. And I don't blame her for that, because I don't think her testifying would have been smart either case. And I don't think she's going to testify again. So I think she felt like, well, this is my opportunity to, at least if I'm convicted, and I'm in prison, then at least you can see this is who I am, take it or leave it.
Yeah. And how she felt going through the process. Yeah. So, but now there's the new trial. So she has exhausted all of her appeals and motions. There was a motion to dismiss that was denied. There was motions to dismiss regarding the juries, what the jurors had said, even though there was never an official polling or anything on the record. And that's another thing that I think is kind of negligent. Why didn't the judge or the attorneys ask that the jury be polled, especially when it was going on for several days? The jurors were sending notes saying we can't come to a verdict, and the judge finally let them go. You'd think that after all that, they would poll the jurors. I don't know. Well, that seems very negligent to me.
Did you see this thing that Peggy sent us about a juror from Karen Reed's first murder trial has joined her defense team? It's an article in Vanity Fair. I haven't read it yet, but
it's an alternate juror who is a lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she spoke out about, she wrote an article after the first trial, being critical of the trial and how it was run. And, she was very obviously pro Karen Reed and contacted them. And so now she's on the team, and I guess that's good insight.
Yeah, very good insight.
She didn't deliberate with the jurors because she was an alternate. But, when you're a juror, you spend a lot of time with these people and you get to know them. And, people make comments here and there, even though you're not supposed to talk about it until you get the case. People say little things, and you can tell how people are reacting to the evidence and the witnesses and whatnot. So that's a good move. I was just going to say, so all of the attempts to try to get this case dismissed have been exhausted. And so the jury selection on this new trial is starting April 1st, which is just a couple days away from where we are now.
Well, they will be going back in time because this is going to be on the 3rd.
Yes. So it's already started.
Happening as we speak.
Yes.
It is happening. It's happening. Well, so tell me, what was your take on Karen Reed? You said she didn't come across as likable.
Well, there's times she's, like I said, she's very rough, or, she downplayed a lot of stuff, like the way that she kind of cavalier, talking about the drinking and
the drinking was really minimized. Very much so.
Yeah. And just, she talked about how she cared about John, loved John, but then she obviously, they were getting in fights, and she was accusing him of, I don't know, being with other women. There was just a lot, and she's just talking about it. It's just, I can't explain it. She comes off as being very rough around the edges, and I can just see people looking at her and thinking that she would be capable of being so drunk, so angry, so out of control that she could do this, that, that she could I mean, her blood alcohol level when she was when she dropped him off was extremely high. And, the way she talked, she's like, well, I only had 7 drinks over the whole course of the whole night. And it's like, only 7 drinks. You're like 110 pounds. I mean,
well, and also, was she 42, 44? I can't remember how old she is.
44, I think.
She's at the time of this. I mean, I went out on Thursday night. I had 2 drinks. I was home by 10 and I'm still recovering. I have a cold now.
You went out and you got a cold.
Yes. I mean, so that means, and all of these people, even, Brian Albert's older than I am. Like all of these people are like around our age, some older, some younger, hardcore drinking. And then, I'm sorry, it's like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Come over to my house. Hell no. I can't wait to get back to my house and put on my pajamas and go to bed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They are partying like we partied in college. Like, this is what it is.
Yeah, I didn't party like that in college. I mean, yeah, she's driving when she leaves the Albert home and she's driving back to John's house. She's calling his cell phone screaming, I fucking hate you.
Yeah.
She called him like 53 times.
Yeah. Not good.
Yeah. So again, the count that the jury could not come to a decision on was the voluntary manslaughter.
Involuntary.
Involuntary. They acquitted her on the 2nd degree, which is, intent. So you can see her being that out of control and reckless, because that's what involuntary manslaughter is. It's recklessness.
Yeah.
And so driving drunk and, being angry and in this big SUV and whatever, that's reckless.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things. Yeah, she is. I mean, her getting in that car was reckless. All of them out partying on a storm night, like all of it was, that part's reckless. And yes, she does kind of minimize, well, we're all getting in our cars and driving home. But the reality is that, Karen, you're this is what happened. Yeah. And
you could have hit someone.
Yeah. Like any of them could have hit someone. And it's just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean that it's, less significant that you're doing it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so now, we have a new jury pool out there who I'm sure everyone, this was such a huge local story. And even though, that it's not, I don't think that the courthouse is in Canton, because they had to move it to a larger courthouse somewhere else just because they needed more space. But it's still the same area. Massachusetts is a small state. These communities are very close together. So, everyone has watched this show. Everyone in that community has watched this show. So now they have heard from her, whether she testifies in the trial or not. And so I don't know if this is genius or if it's a big mistake, to put that out there and into the jury pool. I'm not really sure. It could go either way.
Yeah, that's true. I guess for me, I have felt for Karen because I feel like there's been so much misogyny in this case and we've seen it time, and I really do feel for her in the sense that she is not, she's in her early 40s. She's a professor, but from hearing, she doesn't want to have kids. That doesn't interest her. She obviously was caring for John's niece and nephew and all of that, but she didn't want to have kids. She didn't want to get married. Yeah. And unfortunately, the thing is that she did not fit the mold of what women are supposed to be in our society. They are not supposed to be rough around the edges. They're supposed to want to have children. They're supposed to want to get married. They're not supposed to flirt with ATF agents. They're not supposed to cuss and drink and do all of these kinds of things. And I really do feel like, this is who she is. This is how she wants to live her life. She shouldn't have to justify it to anybody. But I am absolutely with you on the fact that she had a roadie. She had a roadie with her. Like, you absolutely were drunk and got in your car with an open container and drove someone somewhere.
Yeah.
And after that, I don't know. Did she hit him? I don't know. I'm so confused about all of that. I have no idea. I don't know, but it was reckless. It was very reckless.
And this is a case with tons and tons of reasonable doubt, but yet it's being prosecuted aggressively because this was a cop. And, and also trying to protect, it happened at a cop's home and trying to protect those cops there. I mean, I don't know how you're ever going to get to the truth. In the first trial, there was dueling experts on everything. One expert would say, oh, well, this search was done at this time. And then another expert would say, no, that's not the time the search was done. That's the time that they opened the tab. And, and then you've got one dog bite expert who says, oh yeah, this is definitely, these are dog bites on John's body. And then you got another one saying, no, that's not, so how do you get to the truth? There's evidence that's, inconsistent with him being hit by a car, and then there's some evidence that is consistent with him being hit by a car.
And she was absolutely, when she got in that car, she was reckless. And at the same time, there is a lot of weird stuff. Rehoming the dog, like the dog seemed to have a history of attacking people because the dog attacked someone, and then the dog gets rehomed.
Yeah,
that Brian Albert, them moving pretty. They left that house.
They all got rid of their cell phones.
Higgins destroying his cell phones.
Yeah,
taking the SIM card out. I mean, he got real defensive on the stand of like, well, I have the right to do that. It's like, yeah, you do, but come on, we've all had these phones long enough to know you're not taking a SIM card out unless you really don't want something to come out. And that's the thing. And what they were saying, and I think Alan Jackson was saying this, which is very true, which is whatever is on that SIM card might have nothing to do with this case. But the problem is you were doing something that you did not want someone to see.
Right.
And so there is a little bit of like, yeah, and that creates that reasonable doubt. And that creates, it's like the way in which everyone acted is really suspicious. This whole thing was obviously a mess. And I do think the police have gotten a lot of criticism for how sloppy of a job they did in processing this. I will say that it was this, I mean, it's a big storm and this, the solo cups and all this other kind of stuff. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it was really poorly run, but it was this blizzard and they didn't know what was going on. No one knew what was happening. So I kind of, I give them a little leeway on that one of.
You mean the cops who responded?
Yes. Yeah. The people that responded, there's been a lot of criticism of how they collected the evidence, taping things, they didn't tape it off. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. It's like, well, but they're all sitting, they have no idea what's going on. Everyone just got there. So.
And also, even before the first responders got there, Karen showed up with Jen McCabe and someone else, and to find John's body covered in snow on the front lawn of the Alberts house. And she started messing with the body. She was trying to give him mouth to mouth. And so before any law enforcement or EMTs or anybody got there, there was already evidence being, messed with. And there was quite a lot of very suspicious stuff, with the taillight and where did that taillight get broken. And when they confiscated her car and they took it to the Sally port and the video they gave to the defense was inverted. So you couldn't see the side of the taillight that was broken. I mean, just on and on and on with all kinds of little things here and there that just add up to this big mountain of a mess. And so, I mean, I personally think there's a ton of reasonable doubt.
Oh, yeah.
And not even the medical examiner can really even say, definitively if this was a homicide or not. They wouldn't. They couldn't tell. And just and even down to the simple the snowplow driver.
Yeah.
Who went by the house multiple times, saw nothing. And then the next time he goes by the house, all of a sudden, Brian Albert's car is parked right in front of the house, right where John's body was found. Like he was trying to hide it. So just so many things, so many things that I think as a juror, like, but yet I feel like it always all comes back to the drinking and the driving, and the fact that if she did hit him, that's why it happened, because not just drunk, but mad, and because she backed her car up really fast and then you know what I mean? Like she was driving erratically.
Yeah.
She was
mad.
It,
and I don't know. I have never ever rage text anyone. I have never called someone over and over and over again, yelling at them. I've never done that. And I do know people that do. These people are out there. And I think that you either fall into the category of being a rage texter or not. Like, I think that it's definitely, and then if you rage text, you do that in all your relationships. And so this was a toxic relationship in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think the other part of it too is the sense that I get is it feels like the two of them were both kind of operating like we're together, but we're not really together.
Right.
There was this vibe, like he took in those kids and, his life changed and it was the right thing, it was the right thing to do. He wanted to do it, but I can understand. I don't know if he was with Karen. No, he wasn't with Karen at that time. So, but I can also understand Karen feeling a little bit like, hey, I feel like I'm always the one. Maybe she was ending up with the kids all the time and taking care of them. And this wasn't what she necessarily wanted to do or what she signed up for. And I mean, it really wasn't. They were not in a good place. But yeah, she was very, very angry. And so there's a little bit of, you got the sense that they got into a lot of these kinds of fights.
Yeah. I think they were fighting earlier that day, even before they got to the waterfall bar. They were fighting. Yeah. And you're right. It's like they were together, but they weren't. Like she was flirting with Brian Higgins. Like she was ready to jump into a relationship with him.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's supposedly in a 2-year relationship with John.
Yeah.
And Brian Higgins knew that. And he was I think he was a little confused. Like,
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah. I mean, he flat out said it. And she was like, no, no, we're not together like that. And then we hear from Karen, like, about how she owned the fact that it was embarrassing and, it's terrible and her parents are behind her and all that. But her attitude was like, well, hey, John and I weren't married. It wasn't like that. I'm like, but the two of you were in a relationship. I mean, you saw him talking to a woman.
Yeah.
In the lobby of this hotel over the holidays and lost your mind.
Yeah.
So exactly. I don't know. If I was John, I'd be pretty pissed if I saw these text messages. So I don't know. But that was the most painful. That was so painful. I really felt for everyone when they had to go through those messages with Brian Higgins.
Yeah.
Because sexting messages are so, like, when you read them out of context with the other people, there's no way for it to sound anything but cringy. Like, you are so hot, what was that tall, hot blonde we did for our Patreon, where there was a lot of like sexting back and forth. It's really mortifying, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I don't know. She just, and she also made a lot of statements to the effect of, she didn't remember anything. She didn't remember dropping him off. She didn't remember if he went into the house. She remembered
dropping him off. No. I do believe, right? She testified. She said, I saw him. I dropped him off. I saw him walk into the house. She did say that. She saw him go into the house.
But then she changed. Okay. But then when it came up that could she have hit him? Then it seemed to me like she started to doubt if she actually saw him walk into the house, because she wouldn't be entertaining that if she saw him walk into the house. There was no way she could have hit him.
Well, but you could have also, I don't know. I thought that, I mean, again, I don't know. I'm not inside her head, but I thought it was more of like, I saw him walking in the house, and this whole thing of, did I hit him, was like, at some point, did he walk out? I not see him. I got so mad, I reversed and hit him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is possible, because it is very strange he never came back out.
Yeah, because she said she sent him in there to make sure that they were welcome there, which also I think is where I think she was concerned that Brian Higgins was going to be in there because she'd been flirting with him just like a couple days before with those texts, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. She claims she sent him in there to make sure that it was okay. And it's like, well, why, if you didn't think it was okay, why'd you drive all the way over there? I mean, there's just a lot of stuff about her story you can pick apart. And I think she's changed her story again, because I don't think she remembers a lot. Because she was hammered.
I don't think she remembers a lot. And I do think that she is not being perfectly blunt with it. I mean, I think that maybe we would feel differently if she had said, listen, we were driving over there. I was shitting my pants because Brian Higgins was going to be in there. Yeah. And I had been flirting with him, and John and I weren't getting along, and we were fighting the whole way there. And then this happened and that happened. And that's the whole point about this involuntary, unintentional. No, we do not know. I do not believe that she intended to do any of this, but that is the problem, because she was so intoxicated. She can't remember. You can't recount. And that is the flip side of drinking. And I also think it's this level of anger. It's, she has the right to be angry, but just this level of anger. You're out drinking, you're waiting 3 minutes and he's not coming back out. And that sends you into like a tailspin of stuff. Like at that point, I don't know. I would be in this headspace of, oh, forget this guy, or in texting and saying I'm going, or I would just get out of the car and go into the house.
Or did she try to call him?
I think she tried to call him. He didn't pick up, which is also very weird. Like, why she was calling him and he wasn't picking up. She didn't want to text him back and forth, so she called him, and then this starts the series of the angry messages.
Yeah, I mean, she's screaming at him like, those messages. You're a fucking pervert, and and over and over, like calling all the way home. So she's drunk driving and drunk texting and leaving messages. I mean, it's just like all of it. Like and then she gets home and she's still calling him and whatever, and then passes out on the couch. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this documentary, because when we recorded the episode last year, I was very pro Karen Read. I still am. I don't think she should be convicted of anything because of the reasonable doubt issues and, all this, a lot of covering up of stuff.
I think that whether you like Karen Read or not, or agree with what she's done or not, the reality is that this was never going to be a fair investigation. The minute you saw those text messages, the minute you saw the messages from Proctor, and that's the problem. That's ultimately the problem is that doesn't matter whether or not you think she did this or what your feelings about drunk driving is. This was never going to be fair. Yeah.
Yeah. And there is a lot of suspicious behavior and cover up type behavior from the Alberts and everybody. And it doesn't make sense. And all the thing with the butt dialing, and which is just, that's not even a thing anymore.
We don't have dialing. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Butt dialing.
We all have smartphones that you have to actually go inside of and open things, and no one sits on their phone. No one puts it in their back pocket.
And also no one butt dials someone and then the other person butt dials the return.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like one of you has to be aware of what's going on here.
Right.
Yeah. And that's another very suspicious thing.
That was lying. It was like suspicious cover up type behavior.
Yeah.
But now I don't know. This documentary was fascinating. It was very interesting, but I don't know if it does her any favors. I don't know. She kind of towards the end of it, when it got down to the wire, and the stuff was happening with the jury and she was kind of being more vulnerable, and you see her crying, and, I think, and when she talks about what this has done to her life and whatever, you can have more sympathy for her. But when she's just kind of talking about the case, I don't know.
Yeah, but I also, and listen, I don't want to make a bunch of general statements about if all people in New England are like that, but there is definitely an attitude about, toughen up and you get in there. You know what I mean? I think she is someone, not that she's heartless. I just think that she is someone who is, I'm going to power through. I'm going to, not let them see me sweat. I got this. Here I go. And yeah, it wasn't until they got that first call back from the jury that she kind of started to panic, wondering, am I going to be taken into custody? And oh my God, am I going to spend tonight in jail? And what does that look like? And you can really, you can really feel that. And that part of it's really real. So I just don't think that I think she's someone who is kind and loving and vulnerable. I think that she leads with anger. And I think that's her default setting. Everyone has default settings, and her default setting is to get angry about something. And what's underneath anger is usually anxiety about feeling out of control and vulnerable and all of these feelings. Like, because John was making her feel like, I do wonder if she really had some strong feelings for John, and seeing that John maybe was 1 foot in and 1 foot out a little bit with her, and maybe that John wasn't terribly committed, that maybe that's what sparked all of this. And then she starts flirting with Brian Higgins, and that she was feeling the relationship slipping away.
And she made comments about how, she's there with his niece, and, I think maybe she felt used by him for childcare, like she was, I mean, it's like, where are you? Why am I here alone, with your niece? And, she doesn't know he is dead, but I mean, I was going to say something about,
but I will say that of all the, we see this in a lot of Datelines where we hear the voicemail messages of people. Like, she definitely acted like someone, and this is why those messages that she left, that is not someone who intentionally hit him. That is someone who had no idea what just happened, because she's yelling and screaming at him. If she had intentionally hit him, the messages would have been like, John, I'm home.
Where are you?
Oh gosh, honey. Well, maybe I should go back. I'm going to call so-and-so. Like, and so range messages really do, in my mind, help her. Really shows that she had zero idea what was going on, because she wouldn't be calling him all these god-awful names, knowing that eventually this was going to get out.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, she thinks that he just went into the house and just blew her off.
Yeah.
And is not going to not coming out, not coming home, not even answering the phone. So it is consistent behavior with that. And it's interesting, like, how many more times is the Commonwealth going to try to convict her? I mean, because they had to retry it. I mean, their pride is on the line here. So, I mean, I just don't see, I would be shocked if the second trial results in a conviction. I think it's going to be, it could even be, it's either going to, I think it's going to be a hung jury again or an acquittal. And well, if it's an acquittal, it's acquittal. That's the end of the story. But what if it's another mistrial? Are they going to do it again?
Yeah,
I mean, how many times are they going to just keep doing this?
Well, we've got a new attorney trying the case, because Adam Lally.
Yeah. Not very dynamic.
We do see the opening statements of Adam Lally, and then we see the opening statement of David Yanetti's. And this was really just a masterclass in being an attorney. And that's why I was wondering, like, Adam Lally, you didn't think through at all, like, that maybe, this is Alan Jackson. This is like, these guys are good. Like, this Adam Lally, and he gets up there and his opening statement is just about, well, you're going to hear from Jen McCabe and you're going to hear from Brian Higgins, and then there's Snow and Karen Reed and John O'Keefe died and blah, blah. I mean,
well, his closing was even worse because the judge gave each side 1 hour, and Alan Jackson had perfectly timed his, to come in just under an hour. And Adam Lally, he gets a 5-minute warning, and he's clearly nowhere near the end of where he should be. And then the judge gives him a 1-minute warning, and he's still not where. And then she finally says, "I'm going to have to cut you off." And he hasn't even gotten to his closing line. And he says, "Can I just say one sentence?" And she's like, "One sentence." I mean, it was terrible.
It was terrible. And the last sentence wasn't like, "And if you believe, convict Karen Reed." It was like, "Well, and these are all the summations of the parts of things. And if that's what you believe, if you believe that maybe this was happened, maybe you should convict her. I don't know."
Yeah.
I mean, how is this guy winning cases? I mean, there is zero charm. And I'm sorry, but to be an effective trial attorney, you got to have some pizzazz. I'm sorry. You kind of do. You have to have a personality.
Psych Legal Pop will be back after these messages.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Yeah, well, the kind of cases he's used to trying are nowhere near this big or this important, or, this is out of his, I think out of his wheelhouse a bit. But yeah, they've hired some new prosecutor who, can, I guess, keep up with Alan Jackson. So we'll see. And also the big issue here is Proctor has been fired.
Yes. So let's talk about Proctor.
Yeah. He was officially, as soon as this happened, as soon as his testimony came out, everyone was enraged. The governor of Massachusetts even came out and made a statement about this. And they started a federal investigation. They're investigating the investigation. That went nowhere. No charges came out of that. They basically closed that investigation. But Proctor was immediately, suspended from his position, and they've had this process. It's a long process to try to fire a police officer. And so, they fired him officially, not just for what he did in the Karen Reed case, but also apparently for drinking on the job.
Oh, great. Wait, was this a separate incident, or was this?
Well, I think when they just brought all the charges that they had against him. And I guess maybe this drinking thing was something that they had in their back pocket for a while. And maybe there'd been some complaints or something. They knew something. And so I think they just threw it in.
Yeah. And that means,
by the way, you've been drinking on the job,
And that means something else too, which is, you're a police officer. I mean, these people are drunk driving constantly. Like, you know what I mean? And obviously there's a real casualness with drinking. And so, that he's been doing this consistently for years, for them to get to a point to be like, okay, now there's a complaint.
Yeah. Well, so what are they going to do? He is the lead prosecutor. He's the one investigator. Sorry. And he has all this information. How are they going to get this into evidence without him? I mean, are they going to bring him?
Former?
Huh?
Can he testify as like a former investigator?
Yeah, but he has no credibility.
Yeah. And that's why I was saying he's got the Mark Furman problem.
Yeah.
Which is, it doesn't matter how well you, and Mark Furman, obviously, I think probably was a good investigator, just super racist. But yeah, the minute you hear,
being racist makes you a bad investigator.
I guess that's true. I'm sorry, you're right.
Because you're investigating the wrong people. You're blaming the wrong people. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I think Furman was more on the, they They had a lot more evidence in that case. But no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that brings me back to something that I wanted to talk about, which is bias and how, right, the issue with Furman was bias. The issue with Proctor, it's bias. And that I think it was Alan Jackson that said to him, so you had been investigating this case for 9 hours and you already called her a nut job. You know, and just the fact that people, they jump to these conclusions, and it just feels a little bit like in the world that we live in today, I think it's real sloppy for the fact that there's just the bias, the sexism is outrageous of what's happening here. And the fact that, you know, we know so much better. We know better. These police departments know better. You know better than this. And yet, you know, it's obvious you're not doing anything to deal with these law enforcement officers that have extreme bias and aren't checking their biases.
Well, and he's been doing it for, I mean, I don't know how old he is, but I mean, he's been a police officer for 20 years. I mean, you know, it's only, think about it. It's only been in the pretty recent past that, you know, the workplace now requires people to be educated about these issues, and even if you go through the training, how do you undo decades of just your life, just living? And a lot of these police officers, their fathers were police officers, or they come from law enforcement families, and so, you know, since their childhood, they've been around, you know, hearing stories about this and that. And it's just so ingrained that I don't care how many, you know, classes on, you know, DEI things you make people go to, you know, there's only so much you can do.
But then that leads to another point, which is you and I have been doing our jobs for 20 years. I constantly look at my bias, and I'm constantly like, am I making a snap judgment? Am I not? Now, my job really requires me to be, you know, as empathetic as I can be, but so is being an investigator. You know, it requires that same thing. And I don't know, there's part of me that feels like, yes, you're absolutely right. These things are ingrained, but at the same time, what is the responsibility of anyone who has these kinds of jobs? You know, if I got a DUI tomorrow, my DUI would be published in the California Marriage and Family Therapist Guide for everyone to see. Like, there's a lot of I have to be accountable. Like, I have to report that to the board. I have to, you know, now it doesn't mean I can't be a therapist anymore. I mean, you know, any of that, but it just means that I have to take some ownership and responsibility of what I've done, because this is the job that requires it. If I didn't want this ownership and responsibility, then I should just pick another job. And I think it's the same for attorneys, and it's the same for law. I'm sorry.
That's the thing. Like you and I would have to report, I would have to report it to the California State Bar. I could be subject to discipline. You know, it's public record. What, do they have the equivalent thing for police? I mean, if a police officer gets a DUI, I mean, is it published anywhere? Can the public find out about it? I kind of think not. I mean, they get a lot of protection, you know, they get a lot of protection, and that's just how it's always been. And no, of all people, they should be the ones who are constantly being educated, checking their bias, because they're dealing with the general public. They're dealing with people of all different kinds of, you know, walks of life. And they have of all the people in our society, police have to be the most adept at working with anybody out there.
And that's my point. That is my point. That this is what really bugs me. And I feel like it's an issue that no one's really talking about, is that we saw this 30 years ago with Mark Furman. We've been seeing this for decades and decades and decades. And here we are, and we're still, it's still a problem. And we're always going to have bias. We're all biased. We're always going to have biases. We're always going to have our snap judgments. We're always going to have those. It's not about erasing your biases completely. It's about becoming aware of them, noticing them, and then checking yourself to make sure that you're not buying into a belief. And that takes a lot of time and energy and emotional bandwidth and emotional intelligence and all these other things that people don't want to do. But I do think it's one part of this case. If we're talking about police and police corruption and what's wrong with policing, it's like, this is a huge, huge problem.
Yeah. And this is modern day. This is happening right now, last year. So, so I don't know how the prosecution is going to be able to credibly make their case, because he has to testify there's all these facts that, I guess there's some things maybe other people could testify about, but he was the investigator. He's the one who has the firsthand knowledge of all these things. He has to testify, and he's going to have no credibility, and it's just going to be a disaster. So I don't know how they're going to handle that, but that's going to make it harder.
Sorry. And we also saw on the tape, this is the other thing too, is Proctor has no nothing, because Karen Read was arrested twice. The first time for involuntary manslaughter, and then the second time for when they did the secret grand jury and found her, that they wanted to prosecute her for second-degree murder. They go back to her house and we see the footage. And Karen Read's wearing like little teeny tiny boxer shorts, like a tank top, no bra, I'm sure, and she just threw on a sweater because she saw them coming. And so she's obviously upset and, a little frustrated.
They're there to arrest her. Yeah.
Because they're there to arrest her. And she basically is saying something to the effect of like, can I put on underwear, please? Like, can I please have some clothes, or can I do this now? And
she had slippers on. They wouldn't let her put shoes on.
And Proctor walks away and he looks at the guy and he says, see what a nut job.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. The crazy woman wants to put on underwear. It's like, you know what? Why don't we arrest you without underwear? See how you feel.
Free balling it.
Michael Proctor.
I know.
You walk into a jail like that and see how you feel. So it's just, but that is, I think gross. That is an example of, and this is all being taped. This is not an aside. This, and you feel like you can call this woman that you don't know from a hole in the wall, barely, a nut job because she wants to put underwear on. But that's the problem. It's like, because she was being demanding and she wasn't being sweet. She wasn't being like, please, Mr. Proctor, can I put on underwear? Yeah,
she wasn't resisting arrest, even though she was shocked. She didn't know why they were there. They snuck up on her, they literally snuck up on her. They went to the front door, and I don't even know if they rang the bell or not. Maybe they rang the bell. She probably was putting on clothes when, they just snuck up on her, went around the back of her house to her back door. And she's standing there at the back door with just her slippers and her little shorts on. And they start handcuffing her, and she's shocked. She doesn't know what's happening. She was not being aggressive or resisting or anything. And he walks away and he says to the other cop, see how she's fucking crazy.
Because she had, honestly, she had a little bit of a sharp tone. That was really, truly, she wasn't yelling, but she had a sharp tone. And that is what we're talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Like, that is not okay. It's just not okay. All right. I'm very confused about the Sallyport video. So, because we never really get an explanation from the prosecution of why this was inverted to begin with. So, but the defense is saying, well, they inverted it, right? Because it's a way of blocking whatever Proctor was doing on the corner. Right. They're saying that her taillight hadn't been smashed yet. That taillight thing, I'm still very confused about. Of like, when do we saying this? When was this hit? When was this not hit? And then you inverted the video because you didn't want us to see Michael Proctor near where that broken taillight is. I didn't understand any of that.
Well, I think one of their theories is that they've always said that the taillight glass was planted.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the theories is the taillight was broken once her car was in the Sally Port. And so by inverting the video, you can't see a person, Michael Proctor or whoever, on the other side of the car braking it, because it was on the opposite side of what you could see with the video.
So, because I know that both Proctor and the guy's name was Yuri. I didn't write down the last.
Mechanic or Buchanan.
They were investigating it. They were in. So they both say, no, we had nothing to do with the taillight. We're nowhere near the taillight. But we're going to send you an inverted video. I guess, right. So this is what there was never an explanation from the prosecution of why you would give them an inverted video.
Well, the implication is they're trying to hide something. They're trying to hide some activity that's happening on the other side of the car.
So Alan Jackson can't ask, hey, Yuri, why did you give us a flip video? I guess not. That's not a question you can ask, because they keep denying, like, no. But
well, you can't. He's not. I mean, I guess if he testified, I don't know if he testified as a witness. They didn't. I don't think they had this information until, I thought it was after the trial that they got this information about the video. But I could be wrong, because it's in this documentary as if it was part of the first trial.
Yeah, I just thought this was a procedural thing of like how you go about admitting this, because it really, I mean, that was another moment where you're like, if you didn't want to hide anything, why are you giving someone an inverted video? Like,
well,
there's just this stuff.
It's not just that. There's other video that's missing, or looks like it was tampered with, like people were cut out of it. Because there was, who was the guy? What was his name? Is it Colin Albert or?
Oh, the son?
The son or the cousin, nephew, I don't know. One of these people, there's a question of what time he was at, whether he was at the station and what time it was. Anyway, this was all part of their motion to dismiss, saying that they got this evidence either too late, or when they got it, it looked like it had been tampered with. Remember, there was missing video in front of the library where she would have had to drive by.
Yeah.
And they were trying to mess with the timeline. You know, it's just a lot of fishy stuff like that. All put together.
It's a lot of reasonable doubt.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, they try to, well, that was a mistake. That was well, there's too many mistakes like going on here. And, they're trying to hide things and tamper with things. And, the most amazing thing of all is that no one ever even went inside the Albert house. They never got a search warrant to go into the house.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. When she says he went into the house.
Yeah.
And you don't even go into the house. And Brian Albert sleeps through the whole thing, allegedly, never comes out of the house.
Yes. Well, I would like to say in his defense on this, because when I first heard that, I was like, oh, that's crazy. But do you remember?
Oh, yeah. You told this story.
Did I tell the story about the fire?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So there was a fire. There was a fatality across the street, and we slept through that whole thing, and our dog. It was quite the guard dog.
But this guy, he's in law enforcement. Like, he was awake. I mean, people are screaming when Karen Reed showed up in the morning. She's on the front lawn screaming, "I'm sorry, that would have woken you up. It's not the middle of the night anymore. It's like 6:30 in the morning." And he just didn't want to come out. He did not want to be seen. He did not want to be a part of it. And I just can't believe that they never went inside the house. They should have had a search warrant immediately to go in the house. Karen said I saw him go into the house, and now he's dead on the front lawn. Give me a break. I mean, any other case, they would have been all over that house.
Well, and at the end of each episode, they do say that Karen Reed's the only one that's being prosecuted for this or being looked at, investigated. And that is a big problem. Like, do we know, did they do any investigation of anyone in that house?
Doesn't appear so. No.
And so basically they all they're all together and they're all saying, no, we did not see John. And okay, but not one of them is being investigated, like looked at all. Of like, well, where were you when John, what time was this? Where were you? Where? No questions. Yeah. And I think that this part of the documentary, they do get into this whole thing about Karen and Karen's demeanor in court. And I also feel like that's a tough one too, because everybody that is part of John's family or friends, they feel like she should be sad and remorseful and unhappy and the entire time. And that's hard. And
she's not even allowed to smile or like show any emotion.
Yeah, she's not allowed to show anything. So if she shows any emotion, she's too emotional. If she's not emotional enough, she's a bitch. Welcome to being a woman. And so that whole thing was it's just utterly ridiculous. The pressure about how she's behaving.
Yeah. Well, and even the judge called her out a couple times, I guess for being too expressive or, rolling her eyes or doing something. But it's really hard to sit there and listen to people talk shit about you for hours and hours and not even roll an eye or bat an eye. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But you don't want to get up out of your seat.
I challenge anyone to do that. Yeah. No, more sexism.
Yes. Yes. Let's see. Oh, this whole thing was weird. This was a new one. This whole thing with Juliana Nagel, that she was at the Alberts house that night. She's a friend of the McCabe's, and she claims that she saw, like, her brother showed up to pick her up at the same time that Karen was outside, right? And so Ryan sees this, and apparently Juliana calls her brother Ryan, says, can you come and get me from this party? Then Karen pulls up, John goes in, Juliana comes out and immediately says, no, I want to stay. Like, you dragged your brother out from his home in the middle of a storm at 1:00 in the morning. Like, why suddenly do you want to? That I thought was very weird. Like, suddenly everything's flipped. You want to stay and you're having this conversation with him. And wouldn't you have seen John?
Yeah, I was just going to say, she said that she saw John coming into the house.
No. So she says that she claims at first that she saw the big blob of John, because everybody was always suspicious of the fact that, like, how is it that all these people were leaving the house and nobody saw John outside? And I think she was one of the people that was saying, no, I saw something out there. And then, but I just thought the whole thing with her brother was so weird. Like, what's going on there? Like, what's going on in the house that you want to leave, but now you don't want to leave? Like, what is going on?
That makes
You're not
sense.
a 13-year-old. And you put your brother out. To call someone out up in the middle of the night, in the middle of a storm, to say, can you please come and get me? I thought all of that was weird. And no one's ever explored that, but whatever. But apparently she then is interviewed 8 months later with Proctor, and it's not recorded, the interview. So I'm sorry. So I apologize. Her original statement was that she went out there and talked to her brother at the same time that Karen Reed was there. And they did not see John, and they did not see a body out in the snow.
But they saw Karen's car.
They saw Karen in her car. Then 8 months later, after talking to Proctor in an unrecorded video, in an unrecorded conversation, she recounts the story and says, no, I did see a blob. So this is all about, where do you place, at what point did John end up where he was in the snow? Like, was he there after Karen left, or was he there, before?
Yeah, well, she couldn't have seen it. I mean, when you're talking about the blob, it's John's body covered by snow, so it looks like a little mountain.
Yes.
So if he was there if Karen was still there and he was on the ground, he wouldn't have been covered in snow yet. He would have, she would have just seen a body.
Mm-hmm. But but now her new testimony is that there's this blob. I just thought it was weird. And the brother, and like, why are you like, what the one thing that we don't know is what was going on in the house. What was happening inside that house that night that led to all of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a lot of people in there. There were some people upstairs, some people downstairs. Yeah, something was going on. And yeah, I don't know. We'll never know, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I'm surprised no one explored that. Like, why does she's this adult woman is, wants to leave this party so badly that she calls her brother to come out into a snowstorm to pick her up and then changes her mind. Like, what is, that's what I want to know.
And then what, called him back a couple hours later and said,
no. She got a ride home from the McCabe's.
Oh, okay.
If I was that brother, I'd be pissed.
Well, then when she left with the McCabe's, no one saw a body or a pile of snow. I mean,
I think then she's claiming that she saw the pile of snow.
So why didn't she say something?
I don't know. But there's a lot of these things that are very weird. Like, it's just a little odd,
Yeah, because they're trying to make up. They're trying to cover all their bases. They're trying to make a case. So they're like, oh, see, like, look at this.
But I don't know if Ryan testified, but we do hear from him. And he said that he saw no arguing. So when Ryan pulled up and saw Karen in the car, he did not see John at all. And he didn't see them arguing, which I think corroborates her story that he was in the house.
Right.
Because
she's waiting.
If they were arguing and fighting and she was going to hit him, you would have seen all of that, right? If you had pulled up at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. They have these people testifying about stuff that doesn't really fit their narrative. So I don't know how those two got on the stand, what that was about. But yeah, it's just, you just get this sense that these people are really trying really hard to, have this story that's all buttoned up and like they're hiding something.
Yeah. So then we get into the whole thing of the dueling experts. Is it dog bites? Is it not dog bites? All of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And let's see. This is the flirting. They're flirting. We hear about the Aruba trip. And then we hear about the butt dials. And one of the reasons why Brian Albert couldn't come to the phone or pick up the phone was that he was getting frisky. He and his wife, I guess, were hooking up, and that's how he butt dialed Higgins.
What? Well, he had Higgins the phone in bed with him?
What?
He had the phone in bed with him?
Well, that's part of the butt dial. I don't know what the two of you were doing with your phone. But yeah, that was his claim, that he and his wife were like getting busy, and that's how he butt dialed. And then Higgins called him back, but doesn't remember calling him back.
Oh, that whole thing is just ridiculous.
Yeah. And then the Jen McCabe stuff too, about her calling John several times at 1 a.m. and saying all of those are butt dials. Like,
well, and why would she even be calling John?
Yeah.
If he never came, he was never there, according to them.
Yeah.
He never came inside the house. So why would you be calling him?
Yeah. And then we go back to the same thing, which is just, when did Jen McCabe Google search how long to die in the snow? And was it at 2:00 in the morning or 1:00 in the morning, or was it at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning? And again, you hear from all these experts that seem to, okay, yeah, I could, they get up there, they explain it. And you're like, okay, that makes sense. And then the next one gets up there and explains it. And it's like, well, that makes sense too. And this is the part that I don't understand is aren't computers like this should be really accurate? Why is there this this whole thing about like the tabs and when you're opening things up, and I don't know.
I don't know anything about any of that, but I'm sure, there's different operating systems and different kinds of phones, and who knows? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, like, in the second trial, what they include and what they don't. Because clearly, I think they need, they've got to get rid of this reasonable doubt. They've got to get their story straight if they want to get a conviction. Because, their witnesses were terrible.
That poor guy, Joe Paul, the trooper, the really nervous trooper who studied the black box data. And he was really, really nervous. He's the one that testified that she went from 0 to 24 miles in an hour in reverse. And then Alan Jackson just destroys him.
Well, because he's not really an expert.
Yeah.
He's just...
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, too, is that, the defense had... Well, when you think about it, the Commonwealth has a lot of money. Mm-hmm. They couldn't have hired a better expert than this guy because, the defense hired really good experts.
Yeah, these guys that were being hired by the FBI,
Yeah. Why in the world did the prosecution use this person?
Well, and also, I know it's a high-profile case, so it's very nerve-wracking, but why didn't anyone work with Trooper Joe a little bit on his testimony? There is a bit of that. Like, no one's really working with you. No one's helping you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's just, and all the thing about the DNA and how did a single strand get attached to the car and keep the car. And here's the thing, we hear from some of, the other part of this is that we hear from John's, none of his family, but like some close friends, an ex-girlfriend, and they're very, very pro John, pro prosecution. Karen did this. And what's fascinating after watching 5 hours of this is that you can take every single little piece and every fact of this case and everything that's going on, and you can interpret it however you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that friend, his childhood friend, who really kind of started to get on my nerves, the guy with the beard, who was so pro, could not see anything beyond that. I think that he took every fact that came around and, okay, you can spin it this way, you can spin it that way. And my point is this, I just feel like whether I try to look at I really do try to look at both sides every time I'm looking at something. And I'm amazed by all these people that talk in these absolutes. Mm-hmm. Like everybody that was pro John, it's like this stance of, this isn't about this whole case isn't about, John, it's becoming about Karen. But it's like, you made it about Karen. Mm-hmm. Karen didn't make it about Karen. Karen doesn't want to be the star of this. And that's the other part of it too, is this judgment of, well, that she should be in mourning. She should be devastated. She should just accept being framed and not fight for her life. Mm-hmm. Would that then make you like Karen? Would that make you then see that maybe this might not be true?
But
everybody's so invested in these things.
We do this with everything.
That's what I'm saying.
This is our politics. Look at our political. Yeah. We do it with everything. The human brain wants absolutes. It wants certainty. And this is how most people react to most things. So it's not surprising, that you have these two camps. And literally these people, that are outside the courthouse with, the pro Karen and the pro John people, their signs and their pink T-shirts, and they've become obsessed with it. So yeah, it's understandable. I think that's just human nature, and we want answers, and we don't like things to be unsolved.
Yeah, well, and that's so. All of that is true. And we do this for everything. And we have confirmation bias and all these kind of biases where we assume that, the way we handle things or the way it should be handled, all of that kind of stuff. And that's my point. My point is we know enough about this now that we really should be working on this collectively as a group of people. It was just, I do feel for John's family. We see his brother, that had to have been his brother many times. I can't imagine sitting there and having to listen to any of this. it's just truly awful. And now they have to do it again.
Yeah.
So I do feel for them. I really, really do. And I do feel for the people that loved him and cared about him and all of that. But it's just interesting. It's like, there's no in between, or maybe those people weren't interviewed for the documentary. It was just either you're this way or that way. And to me, I feel like, as we've been talking about, there's a lot of gray in all of this, and that, I don't think Karen's absolutely completely innocent. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she hit him or not. I have no idea.
Well, and there's no such thing in the law as innocence. You're either guilty or you're not guilty by beyond a reasonable doubt. And
and she did admit to drunk driving. I'm sorry. She did. That is against the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is true.
Well, we will be watching a second trial. I'm very curious to see how it differs. Like I said, what are they going to include? What are they going to not include? Are they going to change their, kind of change their tactic?
Well,
they're going to have to change something. They want a conviction.
Well, you know what? And they did this to themselves, because they shouldn't have taken this to the grand jury for second degree murder. Like, that was a bridge. That was too much. The second degree was too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you doing here? And that feels a little bit like retaliatory, right?
Yeah, exactly. I understand the involuntary manslaughter. I get it. I totally get that. But second degree murder, no, she did not want him dead. She did not say, I'm going to kill you with my car. That it is retaliatory. And if it weren't this woman up against the whole, Boston Police Department, or the Boston State Police, Canton Police. This wouldn't have happened this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's just, it's unfortunate circumstances for her.
And I think that really, they should get rid of it. I think that muddied the water too much. I think that right? Because it becomes too many different things. And is it this? Is it that? Like, I think what you found was that if they only just focused on this one thing, I think they could have come to some kind of conclusion, And
that was what the jury was hung on.
Mm-hmm.
They were hung on the involuntary manslaughter. So that means that there were, who knows how many? We don't know, because they never polled the jury about anything.
Mm-hmm.
But, I would imagine that it was probably tilting towards guilty.
Yeah, it might have.
Involuntary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're fucking this up for themselves, and they've made statements like we won't stop, until we get a conviction. So that's what I'm saying. How many more times are you going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
How many more times are you going to, because I don't think she's going to be able to get a straight acquittal.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's going to happen. And what is this costing the taxpayers to just keep doing this again and again?
And we're also seeing a class issue too, which is Karen has the means to hire someone like Alan Jackson and David Yannetti.
Well, she's running out of money. She had to sell her house.
Yeah, I'm sure she did.
Move in with her parents, cash it in, like a lot of retirement funds and stuff, because I read something where it's already cost her like $5 million.
Yeah.
Which I believe, because that's a lot of attorney time. You have to pay all these experts. You have to pay their travel. You have to, it's very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm sure her parents have probably been helping her out, and, all of those things. So there is also, she's broke, but she's very lucky she had those resources to get, because I don't think if she had these
to get
lawyers,
this far,
because Alan Jackson, more than once I wrote down, Alan Jackson just destroyed that person. Alan Jackson, and did he do the closing? He did the closing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yannetti did the opening, and he went right up there, and Karen Reed was framed. So good. And his closing was awesome. And he destroyed Proctor. He boom, boom, boom. Poor Joe, the trooper.
I can't remember if this was in the documentary or I read this somewhere, but one criticism of the defense was that because this is such a reasonable doubt case, and there's so much, bias and incompetence and all those other things, that they really kind of made it harder on themselves than they needed to by making it a conspiracy case. Because that was his opening line. Karen Reed was framed. Okay, so now you've told the jury that there was a conspiracy to frame her. Now you've got to prove that.
Yeah.
And it's like, why make it harder on yourself? Because that's where people get hung up in, okay, well, is this Jen McCabe woman who looks like my mom or my sister? Like, is she involved in a conspiracy to frame someone? That's harder for people to conceptualize. If they just, and maybe they'll do it differently this time, if they just stick to, there's just no evidence of this. There's, they don't have the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, and just stick with that. Make it easier on yourself. But I think they're too deep in at this point with the conspiracy that they have to keep going with it. Yeah. But it makes it harder. Like,
no, you're right. You're right. No, it's a very, very good point. Again, would this be such a flashy story if it wasn't about being framed? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah, it does put them in a bit of a pickle, because you have so many things. And even like what I'm saying, I think there's just way too much reasonable doubt. There's just way too much for any of it to say anything.
Well, yeah. And I remember the first time I even heard about this case, I didn't even know the name, but the way that it was presented was, this woman's being prosecuted for murder of her boyfriend, who is a cop, and it happened at the home of another cop, and there were all these other cops there. The minute I heard that, it was just a general description. I was like, oh, wow, there's something there. Yeah. And people were from all, were picking up on this case when it was, first kind of got into the news. And that is what makes this case. It's just too much, too many police in one place at one time.
Well, we haven't even gotten into Turtle Boy, but that's okay. We can move forward.
Well, and he helped. He helped her. He's the one who brought the attention of this case. And then also the one thing they talked about in the documentary, the defense said that early on they got a tip, before they really even knew a lot about it. They got a tip from someone who called the defense and said, you need to look at who lives in that house. Because I didn't think they didn't really know yet. And they said, you need to look at that house, the people who live in that house, and who was there in that house. And so I wonder who that little tipster was.
Yeah. Well, it was someone named Mike, which is very...
Oh, Mike.
Yeah. Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it eventually would have all come out, but that.
Yeah. But we'll keep covering. We're going to keep covering this case and give updates and all that good stuff as it goes along.
Till the bitter end.
Yes.
I can't wait. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We are doing, what are we doing? We're doing Sister Wives. Rewind old shows until until this break is over, and we get some new shows starting later in April. So we do that on Tuesdays, and on Thursdays we do documentaries and other interesting shows that we come across. We also have a Patreon if you're interested in more content, where you get all of these shows ad-free, plus a weekly bonus, plus a monthly true crime and Ask Us Anything episodes for the higher tier. So there's a lot going on there. If you want to check that out, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast and leave us a 5-star review. What else? We're on all the social medias, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And that's about it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
See you later. Bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.